Hi, my name is Clem. I'm the Chief Projection Officer of CLEMCO, co-founder of the production channel, and author of Career Projection 101, an Independent Contractor's Guide to a Successful Business and Balanced Life. The conversation in our industry right now has a lot to do with COVID-19, the pandemic, lack of work, and lack of opportunities for our companies to make money. One thing that's not being discussed is what's going on right now in our country around racial injustice. Today we're sitting with Reggie Butler, educator, lecturer, keynote speaker in the area of diversity and inclusion. Reggie, thank you for joining us.
Oh, thanks for having me, man. And this is important work right now. So I launched the equity, diversity, and inclusion practice probably 8 or 9 years ago to spend most of my time in this space trying to solve the type of problem that we're talking about. Now, I know we're in the middle of a crisis right now, but we've been in a crisis around, representation issues across businesses and things like that for a really, really long time. And I'm just trying to do my part in order to be helpful to certain communities that have been underrepresented for years. And if I look at the work I'm doing, especially as I look at, I am the recipient of the person being on the stage at a live event. So I need people behind the scenes to look like me. It's so important. And I want to do my part, which is why I'm glad you're actually introducing this conversation, because it has to happen. From your point of view, first of all, I just realized, how long have you been in this business?
I've been studying television production, the art of television production, since middle school. Mm-hmm. So middle school, college, I went to Florida State, middle school, high school, college, and then my time with my internship and working in the industry. I've been working professionally in the industry for 19 years. 19 years in this space. And so if I think about the work that I'm doing, there are people who have been in their roles that are a part of underrepresented groups. If they've been there 19 years, they probably haven't advanced that much. So I can take your 19 years and put you parallel to someone else who is a dominant culture or a company owner or whatever, and put them in their 19 years, they will have progressed at 4 times the rate that you have. And that's a problem. Mm-hmm. And I think what we need to do is we need to collectively get one unified voice and amplify that voice and help companies make different decisions about who they hire and who they attract to their businesses. So if I look at you in production, you're doing this because you're trying to solve a problem. Like, what do you think the problem is? Because there's lots of different ways to look at this. So how do you want our viewers to look at this? Right. I understand that in our industry and how we operate, a lot of it is through networking. Mm-hmm. Through networking, getting to know people, and building that, as you like to say, it was FTC, right? So familiarity, comfort, and trust. Yeah. And if you're not taking the time to get to know someone mm-hmm. on a more personal, intimate level, and outside of just work and doing the job, mm-hmm. then you're less exposed to opportunities to progress in your career. Because I've been very fortunate to build a lot of relationships during my time, and that affords me the opportunity to travel to various cities because my clients trust that I will deliver what they ask me to do. And so if I was unable to build that relationship with my clients, then I'm more likely to stay in the role where some of those lower tier roles.
Yeah, and that's so true. So let's sort of articulate this in a way that helps people understand. Like, building a relationship is for some people it's really natural to do, and I suspect, because I've known you for a while, that your ability to build relationships is just part of how you're wired anyway. Mm-hmm. There are some people that are wired not to. Like, it's not natural for them, which is one of the reasons they're behind the scenes in the first place, because they'd rather be behind the scenes. And I don't want it to be a conflicting message that, okay, well, now you've got to stop being that you are. And up to this point, your technical competence was enough. Like, you're really good and you got hired and, you were making money. But now in this new environment, people have to choose people to do work for them that they may not have ever talked to before. So I think about some of the companies you and I have both been a part of. You see the person that signs the contract, mm-hmm. and that relationship is built, and you never see who's behind the screen. Like, we'll never meet any of those people. And some of those people need to be visible now. And that's a new muscle.
Right.
That's a new muscle for this community. So the live event production community has a new muscle to build in order to be relevant, because everything's virtual. And it doesn't look like the world, at least from my vantage point, it doesn't look like the world is going to backtrack into live events anytime soon, where it's not going to impact somebody's quality of life because they're not making money, they're not making revenue. So if you think about this, so that's one problem, is building relationships and somehow getting your voice heard.
I want to touch on something you said though. With things going more virtual, right? And some of the roles, say a stagehand or a breakout room technician, those positions aren't available right now.
That's right.
Okay? And so if you are working with a company and have that relationship of the higher end, say the account executives or the producers, you're more likely to get some of those higher end engineering roles to operate in this virtual space, which will then hinder some of the opportunities to be trickled down, if you will, to some of those lower positions.
And that happens a lot in business anyway, and we need to borrow something from the corporate America sort of methodology of how you make it up. There's a term called pivotal talent, meaning you have a subject matter expertise that you're good at, you're technically competent in, but you also have a couple of other things that you're really good at. And so what the business owner will look at is they'll look at your core talent, and they'll say, how many other things can this person do? Because everybody goes through this ebb and flow of business. Sometimes you grow and scale, and then sometimes you have to downsize. So you grow and scale, and then you have to downsize again. We're in one of the biggest downsizes ever. But people who wind up working are people that are pivotal talent. So it's people who not only are a stagehand, but they can do some of the other things that are connected to what stagehands were connected to, in your point, where they can make it inside of other channels and around other doors in order to still have expertise, which says to people right now, in the live event production community, you need to skill up. You need to skill up in some other areas. You don't have to leave the live event production community. You just need to skill up in a different way. So the question for you is, why do you think there's so little representation of minorities in the live event production world?
I wouldn't necessarily say there isn't representation, but there isn't a lot of representation in some of the higher up positions.
Got it.
In upper management of companies, maybe in scheduling. Some of those roles, the account executives, some of those roles where I know that if I am in a position to hire people on a job, I'm more likely to give an opportunity to someone who looks like me, because I know how important it is to be allowed to shine in a role.
That's so critical. I think there are a lot of people that most backstage people, behind the scenes people, are part of the invisible population that makes things work. I mean, it's fabulous when you go behind the scenes and you look at any movie, you look at behind the scenes, you look at any series, you look behind the scenes. It's fascinating. What we want to see, and I think to your point, which is what everybody's trying to do, is make behind the scenes just as visible and important. And if people don't know who's behind the scenes, like if I don't know you're back there, I won't know to come get you. So to your point, if you're in a higher up position as a person of color, you can look behind the curtain and look for people that look like you. Because you have the ability, or at least the access, to say, I need to go find some other people. Now, this is not this whole conversation that people say, well, if black and brown people wind up in more positions to role, other people are losing roles. That's not what the conversation is
not
at all.
Right.
And so I don't want people to get that confused. But I think there's something we need the community to actually do differently. And what would you say this community needs to do differently in order to literally stay in business in this one moment in time? Things will come back. They will turn around in a different way. But for right now, what do you want this community to do?
A lot of attention is being paid toward educating oneself on their role as a technician. But I would like for our community to also spend time getting to know one another, whether it be a form of a meetup. I think social distancing and all that is a thing right now. I understand that. But there are various aspects of platforms where Zoom, or you can do a virtual chat, a virtual meetup. I know I'm currently doing events where people can gather and just talk. You know, there are other people doing that type of stuff as well. But a lot of it is just opening your mind and opening your heart to really get to know one another, to build that level of trust, so that when our industry does open back up and there are more events, now you have built that relationship. You understand someone's skill level because you've discussed it. You've talked about the various shows. You may even have been on a show, you know, with someone and didn't even realize it.
Right. No, right. That's so true.
And one person could have been part of the success of that show. It's like, oh yeah, I heard about that. Yeah. But you don't know until you begin to have a conversation. And then you get to know how many people you have in common, how many mutual friends you actually have, which will then allow you to also have that sense of trust and build. That's the key thing about the live event production industry. There's so much trust involved. Like, if I'm rigging projectors, video projectors, above people's heads, my client has to trust that I know what I'm doing. You know, if I'm in a breakout room and I have a one-on-one interaction with a client, my client has to trust that I'm going to represent them well. Right. And if people don't take the time to get to know one another, then how can you establish that level of trust?
Yeah, and I will go as far to say is that this is really a good time, and people may not like be able to rationalize this at this moment because everybody's like, but I'm out of work. But the reality is, this is one of the best times to actually make this community stronger. Because usually we were so busy, live production. I mean, literally, we barely were able to be home with our family. Yeah, and we didn't have time to make relationships with people. Are you kidding? And the reality is now, making a stronger community while we have what's called, in history, this will be a short pause. When you think about it, it's just going to be a really short pause.
A much needed pause. Much needed.
Tell me about it. And now's the best time to invest in your own future. I've got some colleagues in the space, and they had always said to me, well, live productions were hot and everybody was busy. It says, I wish I had time to think about this one idea I have to make this process more efficient behind. Well, guess what? Now you have time.
Now's the time.
Now you have time.
You also say best time to invest in your future.
Yeah.
Right? Now is also the best time to invest in yourself.
Yeah. Yeah.
Invest in your relationships. You know, invest in your time management, invest in your budget. All of those things that you were too busy to do before is important to do now. And that's what we're talking about, investing in those relationships.
Yeah.
Building those relationships, because those relationships are what will allow people to work and allow people to get the income.
No, it's true. It's true. Let be real. You know, I'm real all the time, and I think there's one other aspect I want to explore with you, but I also want people to not live in this area of dark frustration about what's going on right now. I mean, everybody's going to go through that one small grief cycle. It's like, I wish things hadn't happened the way they happened. But at some point, it's just like when we have a cold or something, like at some point, I'm tired of being in bed. Like at some point, and I'm not trying to make light of the condition that we're in right now, but at some point, you have to want to stand up and go see what you can explore to make things better. Because the people who are prepared when things start to turn around are going to be the first to market, are going to be the first ones that are going to get hired. People that have been sitting and waiting and haven't skilled up, don't have any new solutions, don't have any ideation that they've worked on, they're going to be left behind no matter how much you've invested in a relationship. So you've taught me that. I've watched you go from role to role to role, show to show to show, always being involved in doing something, always thinking of a better way. That's how people have to breathe and inhale and exhale right now. What can I do while things are down so that when things go up, I'm positioned the right way? And I just want to wake people up to do that. So you specifically, what's your role in this whole long game around this community? How do you view your role and what's supposed to happen next?
It's one of the hardest questions that I had to answer for myself. When I started in this industry as a 21-year-old, right out of college, I was very skilled at my position. You know, as a camera operator. I had so many years of shooting sports, Florida State, and then going to the Orlando Magic, and then working my way into the live event production industry. And every year, like you said, position, just striving to be better. And I realized that during that time, I didn't know how to best manage myself as a business and grow, manage my finances, all that type of stuff, right? And so my role in this industry is to think about the people. A lot of companies, and I don't blame them, that's their focus. Their focus is on the gear and delivering a quality product to their client. So for myself and my company, we're focused on coaching, leading, educating, and mentoring independent contractors. That's what CLEMCO stands for.
Yeah.
And so from that perspective, I invest all my time, and not all my time, but my family as well. I invest a lot of my time, a lot of my efforts in making sure that the people have the information that they need, or have the information that they don't even realize that they need.
Yeah.
Because I was in that position. I didn't realize what I needed, and no one was having that conversation with me.
Yeah, you are playing the role of a mentor to an entire community, and the role of mentor in this community is critical because some of the information you've been sharing on your webcast and on your podcast, people didn't know they didn't know it until you brought it up. So I think you're giving people a gift because you're not asking for anything in return, because the return on investment for you is the community. Right. Getting stronger and getting better. And I think we need to do more of that in a lot of different ways.
Part of my story is growing up in poverty. It was just my mom and I. And, I'm 6'7", as we discussed. I often get put in this box of expected to be an athlete, expected to be a basketball player. And that's not who I am. That's sports. Sports wasn't what took me out of my situation. It was television production. And so my love for this industry, my love for the experience and the opportunities, I've traveled abroad to do a show. For Estee Lauder, I went to Barcelona. I was over there for 11 days. Like that's a thing that happens. And all I was doing was following my heart and following my passion. And a story like that can resonate with so many people. And I feel like if we were to open up and to make some of those types of connections, that's where the relationships are built. That's where the jobs are handed out or offered up, because I see you, and I want people to see me, and I want other people to be vulnerable and open up and basically expose yourself so that people can see who you are.
Yeah, so I'll double down on that one, and I'll say most people give contracts and promotions and extended contracts to people they like and they trust. And you talked about the trust part. And the like part comes from, I have to spend enough time with you in order to like you. And so I think what we're asking people to do is sort of invest in the relationship in a new way. Because right now, most people in the production world invest in a relationship because it's transactional. There's an event next Thursday.
Yes.
Am I available? Yes or no? And if yes, what do I need to bring? And then you just go do it. With bypassing all the human connections that could have been made, the soft skills that could have happened in order to make not that next event the last event. I know some people in this space, it's not about the next event. It's about creating a relationship so that there's another next event and another next event and another next event. And some of that has to do with your core competency and your skills, and some of it has to do with who you are. So I really appreciate you doing what you do. I'm fascinated that you have taken this on. It's almost like it's a mission.
It is.
To make a difference.
It really is.
So what's the message? Thanks for inviting me to the show. I'm honored to be a part of being helpful. But I need this to change because I'm tired of being on stage looking out and not seeing people behind the screens that look like me. It's so good to see that, and I know what you're doing that, and I want to thank you for it. What's your message that you want to leave to this community?
I want you to understand the value that you bring, not only to a job site, but to the world. We all have our stories, and our stories connect with other people's stories. Those stories, those connection points are what will allow us to be a great industry when we come back. Don't fall into a state of unassuredness, depression, uncertainty. Know that you have value, you mean something, and we'll be great. Reggie, thank you so much for being on the production channel. This is a show that I started with Stephen Bowles, and it's been something that's been very dear to my heart because it's allowed for our conversations to be heard, for our industry to be discovered.
Yeah.
You know, that's one of the reasons why I wrote my book, Career Projection 101, because I wanted to provide the tools and the resources for people who didn't even know that they needed them, you know, because I was that person. And so, you know, if you would like to connect with me and understand what all CLEMCO is doing to help the industry, visit our website, clemcoav.com. We look forward to connecting with you.